a 7-year-old girl wakes up in the middle of the night. She hears screaming, her mother's voice, desperate, guttural, a sound no child should ever have to identify. She opens her bedroom door, and through the darkness, she sees a figure standing over her mother, swinging something long and metal, again, and again, and again. Blood on the walls, blood on the floor, blood on her bedroom door, and through the mask covering his face, she recognizes his eyes.
What did the robber look like?
He looked like her dad.
So, was he a big guy, or was he a little guy?
The size of my dad.
She'll later tell investigators, it looked like Daddy. Then she'll pause and say something that will haunt every detective, every juror, and every person who hears this case. But it couldn't have been Daddy, because then who would take care of us? What she didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that her father hadn't swung the weapon himself. He paid someone $10,000 to do it for him. And right now, while her mother lay dying on the kitchen floor, he was sitting at a poker table, 15 miles away, building the perfect alibi. This is the story of Kelley Clayton, a mother of 2, a woman her friends described as the kind of person whose laugh you could hear from a mile away, a woman who, 5 weeks before she was murdered, looked at a friend and said, "He's the greatest guy. I hit the jackpot with him." She was talking about her husband, the same man who ordered the hit. If this story shakes you the way it shook us, hit subscribe to Crime Vault 365 and turn on notifications, because the cases we cover here are the ones that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Thomas Clayton was born in Binghamton, New York in 1978. He played hockey at Niagara University, and when he graduated, he joined the Elmira Jackals, a minor league team in upstate New York's southern tier. He wasn't a scorer. He was an enforcer. 5'10", 181 pounds. Not the biggest guy on the ice, but he played like he was the most dangerous. In 5 seasons with the Jackals, Thomas racked up 457 penalty minutes. That's a stat you earn with your fists. Women noticed him. His sister-in-law, Kim Bourgeois, remembered the night Kelley first saw Thomas play. This player gets checked into the boards, his helmet comes off, and all 3 of us were like, wow, he's pretty cute. Off the ice, Thomas was already showing who he really was. In 2003, he brawled with 4 police cadets at a local bar, charged with a misdemeanor, reduced to disorderly conduct. Everyone shrugged it off, hockey guys being hockey guys. But the violence wasn't something Thomas Clayton left on the ice. It was something he carried with him into his businesses, his relationships, his home, and eventually, into a murder plot. Kelley Elizabeth Stage was born in 1980, also in Elmira, youngest of 3 kids. Her father was the West Elmira fire chief. She played softball, did gymnastics, cheered, made the honor roll. Her college roommate would later say, "The most important thing about Kelley is her laugh. You could hear her a mile away, and it was contagious." After college, Kelley did something nobody expected. She moved to Las Vegas, got a job as a cocktail waitress at the Imperial Palace. Her sister Kim said she wore a 30-pound feather headdress and loved every second of it. But eventually she came home. She needed her family close. And that's when she walked into an Elmira Jackals game and saw the enforcer with the helmet knocked off. Thomas and Kelley married around 2006. They had 2 children, a daughter named Charlie Emma and a son named Cullen, who everyone called Crash. They moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, bought rental properties, started a taxi business. Then returned to upstate New York, where Thomas opened a Paul Davis Emergency Services franchise and later became production manager at a ServPro franchise owned by his friend Brian Lang. From the outside, they were a catalog-perfect family. Beautiful home on Ginnan Road in Caton, surrounded by woods, 2 kids, 2 incomes, the kind of couple people envied. Kelley still gushed about Thomas to anyone who would listen. Her friend Greg Miller remembered her saying, just weeks before she died, "He's the greatest guy. I hit the jackpot with him." But behind the front door of that brown-paneled house in the woods, Thomas Clayton was living an entirely different life. Thomas had at least 3 women on the side. One was his State Farm insurance agent, who testified at trial about their sexual relationship. He told every woman the same thing about Kelley, that she was lazy, that she was a burden, and always the same punchline: "I can't divorce her. She would take everything." Thomas Clayton was obsessed with money. He kept 2 safes in his home. He routinely carried thousands of dollars in cash to his weekly poker games. He once loaned his car to a friend's sister, with $22,000 sitting inside it. And sometime in the year before Kelley's death, Thomas doubled her life insurance policy. He inquired about increasing it to $1 million through the same insurance agent he was sleeping with. But Thomas didn't just want Kelley's money, he wanted Kelley gone, permanently. And he already had someone in mind for the job. Michael Beard was a former employee at Thomas's businesses. He'd worked at both the Paul Davis franchise and the ServPro operation. He was also a tenant in one of Thomas's rental properties, behind on his rent and facing eviction. A coworker later testified that Thomas kept Beard indebted to him, loaning money, giving him side jobs, having Beard work off debts instead of paying them back. It was a leash, and Thomas kept it short. In April 2015, Thomas floated the idea. He offered Beard $10,000 for a vague job, one that, he warned, could land Beard in jail. Beard jokingly asked if Thomas wanted his wife killed. Thomas smiled, but he didn't say no. Then, on September 17, 2015, just 11 days before the murder, Thomas fired Beard from ServPro. The timing was surgical. It severed the formal employment connection between them. And it pushed Beard to the edge of financial desperation, exactly where Thomas needed him. The plan was this: Beard would kill Kelley, and then burn the house down to make it look like an accident. Thomas would collect the life insurance, the homeowner's insurance, survivor benefits for the children. Her sister Kim later laid it out. If his plan had come to fruition, he would be done with his wife and his children. He would have collected my sister's $1 million life insurance policy, survivor benefits from the children, homeowner's insurance. One woman's life reduced to a payout. But before the actual night, there was a rehearsal. On September 21st, Beard texted Thomas 2 words: "Need a bike." Prosecutors later argued that Thomas dropped off a bicycle, Beard's silent mode of transportation, to the ServPro parking lot, where he could swap to a company vehicle without being heard. 2 days later, a former ServPro employee testified that he drove with Beard close to the Clayton home after midnight. Beard got out, disappeared for half an hour, then came back. A dry run, scouting the property, testing the route, checking entry points. He called it off. Not because of second thoughts, because the conditions weren't right. 5 days later, they would be. September 28, 2015, Monday night. Thomas Clayton arrives at the home of Greg and Linda Lucky Miller in Corning around 8 p.m. for the weekly poker game. GPS data from his ServPro truck logs departure from Ginnan Road at 7:37, arrival at 7:51. The regulars are all there. But tonight, something is off. Thomas isn't drinking with his usual intensity. He's not gambling as big. He's distracted, quiet, like a man waiting for something. At approximately 10:50 p.m., Thomas asks to borrow Lucky Miller's cell phone. He claims his phone is dead, still in his truck. There are chargers available. The reception in the basement is fine, but Thomas insists he needs Lucky's phone. He makes one call to Michael Beard. According to Beard's grand jury testimony, this was the green light. Kelley and the kids had gone to bed. The house was dark. Beard was good to move forward. The game ends early, around midnight. Usually they play until 3 a.m., not tonight. Thomas heads home. What Thomas didn't think about, what would ultimately help destroy his alibi, was Lucky Miller. The next morning, when Lucky hears that Kelley Clayton is dead, she grabs her phone. She wants to check what number Thomas called the night before. The call log is blank. Thomas had deleted it, but Lucky and her husband log into their phone account online, pull up the call history, and hand the number to police. When investigators plug that number into Facebook, one name comes back: Michael Beard. After the 10:50 call, Beard moves. He cycled to the ServPro parking lot. Waiting there was a maroon Dodge Ram pickup belonging to a ServPro employee. Thomas had arranged a truck swap days earlier under the pretext of moving an ATV. Surveillance cameras at the adjacent Ladybrook mini storage captured the vehicle movements. Beard picks up Mark Blandford, a friend from Elmira who agreed to be a lookout in exchange for money. On the drive to Clayton, Beard turns to Blandford and says, "I'm gonna have to kill a bitch." Blandford later testified he thought Beard was going to burn down a house, not commit murder. Beard parked at a logging path, roughly 4/10 of a mile from 2181 Ginnon Road. He entered through the garage using a key Thomas provided. Inside, the house is dark. Kelley is asleep in the master bedroom. Charlie and Colin are in their rooms. Beard enters the bedroom. He's carrying a fiberglass maul handle, the shaft of a wood-splitting tool. A co-worker would later identify it as one accidentally broken on a job site. He strikes Kelley twice. She doesn't die. She fights back. The struggle carries from the bedroom into the hallway, down the stairs, where the impact puts a hole in the sheetrock at the bottom of the staircase, and ends in the kitchen. That's where Beard beats Kelley Clayton to death. Blood covered the walls, the floor, the doors. When a sheriff's deputy arrived and activated his body camera, he said 5 words: "She's been beat to death." Kelley was found on the kitchen floor, surrounded by what investigators described as a halo of blood. 7-year-old Charlie woke up during the attack. She later told investigators, "In the middle of the night, this guy came and started hitting my mom with like this pipe thingy. There was blood everywhere, on my door, on the floor." She watched her mother fight for her life. She described her mother sort of suffering. And then she said 4 words that will follow this case forever. "I hugged her leg." Beard changed out of his bloody clothes, stuffed them in a gym bag, and fled with Blandford. Along the route, he disposed of the evidence: the maul handle off Route 225, the bloody clothes in a swamp near Elmira, the house keys into a creek. At 12:55 a.m., surveillance cameras capture the red pickup returning to the ServPro lot. Headlights off. 4 minutes later, at 12:59, a figure on a bicycle leaves the lot. Michael Beard, pedaling home in the dark, believing he'd gotten away with it. Meanwhile, Thomas Clayton pulls into his own driveway at 12:35 a.m. At 12:39, he calls 911.
Help me, my wife's dead.
Is she breathing at all? Nothing?
No, touch me.
Okay, is she beyond CPR?
Yes.
"My wife, she's dead." He takes the children to a neighbor's house, tells them it was a robbery. And then, before the patrol car even leaves the driveway, Thomas makes a remark that stops investigators cold. "Well, you'll know where I am because my vehicle has GPS on it." No one had asked. No one had accused him of anything. His wife's body wasn't even cold, and Thomas Clayton was already building his defense. The investigation cracked open faster than Thomas expected, and it started with his own daughter. Sheriff Jim Allard spoke with Charlie at a neighbor's home within hours of the murder. She still had her mother's blood on her shirt. She told him a man was hurting Mommy, and Mommy was yelling, "Run, Charlie, run." When Allard asked how she knew the intruder was a man, Charlie said, "Because his eyes looked just like Daddy's." A second interview at the Chemung County Child Advocacy Center drew out more detail. Charlie said the intruder looked real. "He looked like my dad." When asked how, she described his mask and his jeans. The interviewer asked if she'd ever seen anyone wear a mask like that before. Charlie said one word. She recognized the camouflage mask from her father's belongings. It wasn't a stranger's face she was describing. It was a familiar silhouette, wearing something she'd seen hanging in her own home. And then came the line that gave the 2020 episode its name. Sheriff Allard recalled, "Every question I asked her related back to Daddy." And then she looks at me and goes, "But it couldn't have been Daddy, because then who would take care of us?" A 7-year-old, trying to solve an impossible equation. Her eyes told her it was her father, but her heart couldn't accept a world where that was true. While Charlie's testimony broke hearts, it was technology that built the cage around Thomas Clayton. The prosecution brought in Cy Ray, a former Arizona detective who founded a company called ZX. His software takes raw cellular data, call records, GPS logs, cell tower pings, and maps phone movements visually across a timeline. Ray analyzed approximately 67,000 data points from Beard's phone records and the Clayton family's Verizon history. What those data points revealed was devastating. Thomas had told police he'd had no contact with Beard. The cell data showed 68 calls between them in September alone. Calls routed through other phones. Thomas thought would hide the connection. Lucky Miller's cell, the landline at a mechanic's shop near ServPro. The data placed Beard and Clayton in each other's vicinity on multiple occasions in late September. Too precisely timed for anything innocent. After the verdict, jurors told prosecutors Ray's evidence was the single most damaging element of the case. 67,000 data points, each one a thread. Together, a net neither man could escape. Michael Beard went to trial first, October 2016 in Steuben County Court. Here's the twist. After his arrest, Beard had confessed. Told police Thomas hired him for $10,000 to kill Kelley and burn the house. Led them to the murder weapon on Route 225, the bloody clothes in a swamp, the house keys in a creek. Confessed again before the grand jury. But right before trial, Beard recanted everything. Claimed Thomas only hired him to burn an empty house for insurance money. That he walked in and found Kelley already dead. The jury didn't buy it. November 4, 2016, after 7 hours of deliberation, guilty of first-degree murder. Sentenced to life without parole. Thomas Clayton's trial began January 9, 2017. This one was harder to prove. The prosecution couldn't use Beard's confession. They couldn't call Beard as a witness. Everything was circumstantial. Special Prosecutor Wheaton Wetmore presented 65 witnesses and over 400 pieces of evidence across 7 weeks. Phone records, GPS data, surveillance footage, testimony from mistresses, the doubled insurance policy. And Charlie's taped interview played for the jury. Thomas's defense called just 10 witnesses in 3 days. Thomas did not take the stand. In his closing argument, Wetmore read testimony from Thomas's mistresses. Then he told the jury, what was the motive? He wanted out. Thomas Clayton is incapable of love. He described what Thomas did when he found his wife's body on the kitchen floor. Would he check on her? Would he kneel down? He apparently tiptoed around her. He's got no blood on him whatsoever. February 23, 2017. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury came back unanimous, guilty. First-degree murder. Thomas Clayton was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. At the sentencing, Kim Bourgeois, Kelley's older sister, stepped to the podium, and she read a letter, not her own, Charlie's. The little girl, now 9 years old, had written it herself. Kim read the words aloud. I feel like Dad is a coward because he asked Michael Beard to kill my mom. Then Kim delivered her own statement, directly to the man who orchestrated her sister's murder. You took her life, not her light, and her light will shine forever, through Charlie, through Cullen, through me, through my brother, through my mother. Forever, and we will be okay. Thomas broke his silence for the first time. Shouted at the courtroom, insisting he had nothing to do with the murder. Then claimed Kelley had come to him through a seer, and was embarrassed her family turned their backs on him. Most of Kelley's family walked out before he finished. Thomas Clayton's appeal was denied in 2019. He sits in Sing Sing Correctional Facility. He will die there. Michael Beard's appeal was denied in 2020. Life without parole at Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora. Mark Blandford, the lookout, got 3 to 6 years for manslaughter. Paroled in 2020. Charlie and Cullen live with their Aunt Kim in Horseheads, New York. Charlie developed severe PTSD. Cullen, 3 at the time, who slept through the attack, cried out at night for his mother. In March 2017, the Elmira Jackals hosted a domestic violence awareness night in Kelley's memory. Charlie and Cullen dropped the first puck. The arena filled with purple. Jerseys were auctioned, raising over $14,000 for the Children's Trust Fund. Kim Bourgeois said that night, the arena holds really good memories of their mother and their father. This is a happy place for them. Thomas Clayton sat at a poker table while his wife was beaten to death in their kitchen. He hired a desperate man he'd spent years manipulating. He doubled the insurance policy through a woman he was sleeping with. He deleted a phone log and thought no one would notice. But a woman named Lucky checked her phone the next morning. 67,000 data points mapped every lie, and a 7-year-old girl, with her mother's blood still on her shirt, looked at a sheriff and said, "His eyes look just like Daddy's." Kelley Stage Clayton was 35 years old, a cheerleader, a gymnast, a Las Vegas showgirl, a mother, a sister, and a friend whose laugh you could hear from the next room. She deserved a different ending. Her light didn't go out. It lives in Charlie, in Colin, in the purple ribbons that still hang across the southern tier every October. And it lives in the words her sister spoke at sentencing, aimed at the man who tried to erase her from this world. "You took her life, not her light.